So one of the not so often talked about aspects of retro gaming is the controllers. Yeah, sure, we see the newest GameSir or 8BitDo and people will buy whatever that is. But what if you want to be very specific about use cases? What if you want the best of the best options for each system? Or the systems that really need a specific controller because they're weird. And well, that was the rabbit hole that I went down months ago, so let me share with you my findings and what I ended up using for each system, essentially. Because the end goal is to get you to play more games, and what better way to get you to play more games than using controllers made for those specific systems to play those games. Okay, and let's start with the actual collection of what I have here and what we'll be talking about today. I have my Asus ROG Rikiri 2 controller. This is my catch-all, plays everything sort of controller. It's an Xbox style, which is what my favorite type of controller is for modern games and really everything. And I love this controller, but we'll talk about why it might not be for everybody and why you could pretty much use any generic controller you want for a catch-all sort of scenario. Next up though is the GameCube controller. This is an actual OEM GameCube controller. You might be wondering, where's the cable? Well, it's gone. This is an 8BitDo mod kit that I used to get this to be wireless. It's a Bluetooth wireless. To get it to be wireless with the PC, you got to use their little retro adapter so that it works with analog triggers and all that sort of thing. We'll talk about that a little bit later, or you could just use it wired. But this is what I like to use for GameCube games. Then we get to Nintendo 64, and of course I have the 8BitDo 64 controller here. This is my preferred way to play Nintendo 64 games. I've been using it wired lately to the PC, but it is Bluetooth, so you can really connect it to anything. And it is probably the best option that you have for Nintendo 64 games. And because Nintendo 64 uses a weird layout, you want to use a controller for that. Next up, we have the 8BitDo M30. This is an awesome controller, 6-button. I use this for Sega games, Sega Genesis, and 6-button games. So really, there's a lot of use cases here. This is probably one of the better controllers you can grab because it lets you have access to 6-button games. And that's pretty cool. Then, lastly, I have my Wiimote and Nunchuck, which of course is for Wii. And you are absolutely going to need this if you want to play proper Wii games. And you want the original OEM Wiimote and Nunchuck because third-party ones don't work that well when it comes to emulating. However, I also 3D printed a light gun that you can put the Wiimote in and use. The trigger works, everything works, and that's pretty cool to go with the Wiimote and Nunchuck as well. So these are all of the different controller options that we're going to talk about today. It's not perfect, but it is good enough for what I want. The only thing really missing that I've been on the lookout for is a good Super Nintendo style controller. Not for any reason that it will let me play any more systems or anything like that. It's just one of those form factors that I loved. Super Nintendo, I love the controller. I've tried every controller on the market that looks like a Super Nintendo controller. None of them come close to what I'm looking for. So hopefully at some point in the future, I'll get one of those. But otherwise, it's close to perfect. Now, before we get in deeper, let's talk about today's video sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay is your way to get things 3D printed and sent to you in the easiest of ways. Like the light gun holder that I 3D printed, and you're going to see in today's video. 3D print it with PCBWay. Or have you ever seen the handheld holders that I have on my Kia Scatties that used to be in my videos behind me? 3D print those as well. Upload the design, print it, and send it. It's super easy. They do so much more with PCBs, CNC, stencils, and all of that. So you should check them out. Linked in the description. It's PCBWay. So once again, for just general RetroArch gaming, which means Game Boys, Super Nintendo, PlayStation, and so on, when I'm not on a handheld, as well as modern games, I'm using the Asus Rikiri 2, and it is my absolute favorite just general use controller. Now, this thing is expensive, and it's not necessary at all, and really any controller could work for your setup to have just a general controller. I've used the GameSir G7 Pro in the past, and I like that a lot. Xbox Series controllers I've also used, and pretty much anything. But I'm personally somebody who likes the Xbox style of controllers, and so I'm not a big fan of the 8BitDo Pro 2 or Pro 3, and really those types of controllers either. But those are options if you do happen to like those style of controllers. But again, for most of these systems, any controller can work, and really you just need a good D-pad, which I love the Rikiri's D-pad, and it is really comfortable and light. The big benefit here is I use this for modern games as well. So I want my general use controller, and you should as well, just be the best that I have. It's probably the most expensive controller, the best controller in my collection, and so it'll work for really anything. Again, I'm a big fan of the Rikiri too, but it is hard to recommend for the price. It is very expensive. I think the GameSir G7 Pro is a very good alternative. It's a lot cheaper, but again, really anything works here. You just want something that's gonna work as a general use. Now, as we move on to more retro systems, the first system that really throws a wrench into things is the Nintendo 64. Oh man, Nintendo 64. On a normal controller, you would have to remap the right stick to work as the C buttons. But then in some games like Super Smash Bros., you would want to map some face buttons to C buttons for easier jumping. And it just becomes a total disaster. So you have two options available to you. You can grab an original Nintendo 64 controller and then mod it using the 8BitDo mod kit, and boom, you have an original controller that you can use through Bluetooth. I don't remember why. It might be compatibility reasons because I did do this, I have it, but I didn't much enjoy this setup. So I went with the 8BitDo 64 controller, which is Bluetooth. So unfortunately, it isn't 2.4 gigahertz, which is what I would prefer. However, it does work with a great many devices like the Analog 3D, Nintendo Switches, Windows, Android, and so on. This is my go-to Nintendo 64 controller. If I'm playing N64, I'm using this controller, no matter what. It's obviously a bit differently shaped than the original N64 controller, but I've found that it's close enough and it works just great that I don't really mind that it's not an existing N64 controller. Look, I don't think you can go wrong with the original controller or the 8BitDo 64 versions, but I do find that you need either one if you plan to experience Nintendo 64 properly, because a lot of games really need that proper control scheme that you just can't get out of an Xbox controller or whatever. But Nintendo 64 isn't the only system with a weird controller, and so that's where we talk about the 8BitDo M30. This is a 6-button controller, and I'm using the 2.4 gigahertz version for low latency, but they do have a Bluetooth version in case you want that. Now, I am admittedly not a Sega expert at all. Never had a Sega console growing up, and I have been experiencing these systems for the first time as an old man adult. But there is a number of games out there for the Genesis and Saturn, from my understanding, that use the 6 buttons quite a bit. And so I wanted that option to be able to play those games properly once again. I'm a big fan of the M30, outside of the D-pad, which I find hurts my thumb just a little bit after longer sessions. But the rest of the controller is awesome, and it is perfect for this exact use case. Admittedly, you could probably get away with not needing a 6-button controller, but it does come in handy for those odd games that need it. Sometimes it is fun to just pick up a controller that is specifically meant for a specific system though. And then we get to GameCube games, and the GameCube controller is probably the most unneeded on my list today, but I found that using any other controller for GameCube is a little bit weird because of how the GameCube controller's buttons are laid out. It's a bit hard to explain, and I probably couldn't explain it if I wanted to, but for me it is kind of a necessity to use the GameCube controller here. Now, I decided that I wanted the original Smash Bros. Version of the GameCube controller, and I used the 8BitDo mod kit here to make it wireless and Bluetooth. However, you can't use analog triggers or rumble unless it's plugged in. Unless you buy their retro receiver, which does add onto the cost, and then you can use both of those things wirelessly with a PC. And it keeps the controller wireless, of course. So yeah, all of this is probably unnecessary for most people, but I love it, and I wanted it to be the best. That does bring us to Wii, though, and probably the most important controller today if you want to actually play Wii games, because it's the Wiimote and nunchuck. While there's a lot of games that don't use motion or the pointer on Wii, there is a lot that do. And so to properly play those games, you want the official Wiimote and nunchuck, as well as the Mayflash Dolphin bar. With these three things, you can have an awesome Wii experience for emulation. And for added benefit, 3D print yourself a light gun holder for those rail shooter games like House of the Dead or Ghost Squad, which is also awesome. Now I went a bit overboard with buying the Mario Wiimote and all of that off of Amazon, but you could probably find full Wii sets off of Facebook Marketplace, including the actual Wii console and multiple controllers and all of that. I know I can, so you probably can too. So I would just pick one of those up instead and not even bother with Amazon. Learn from my mistakes. Then just pick up the Mayflash Dolphin Bar off Amazon and you're set. Either way though, a Wiimote and nunchuck is absolutely necessary in my mind if you want to play Wii. And so that's my collection of actual controllers that serve specific functions, that have actual use cases rather than I am just going to buy the same Xbox style controller 20 different times because 8BitDo just released a new one and GameSir just released a new one and Asus just released all of that. I don't care about any of that. I want one single of those controllers and then I want my other controllers to serve specific functions. And so this is my collection and that's my use cases to maybe give you some ideas of what you can do on your end. And if you're wondering, because I'm guessing you've noticed that some things are missing from today's video, we're going to be talking about arcade, rhythm games, light gun games, and all of that in another video because I have an awesome newly purchased AtGames Legends Ultimate arcade cabinet that I've turned into an everything machine that has to do with all these peripherals and weird accessories and controllers and such. So we'll talk about that in depth in another video. But I'm just missing pinball. Pinball is the last one I'm missing. The closest that I've got to that one is the Pokemon pinball machine that I saw for like $1 million gajillion in US dollars. However, you can catch the Pokemon with an app and it's super cool, but like I cannot spend that amount of money on a Pokemon pinball machine. I would not be allowed to, but pinball is the one thing that I'm missing that I really need to get into. There is the AtGames Legends pinball, which is pretty cheap when it comes to pinball machines, but it is virtual pinball. And I feel like if I'm getting a pinball machine, I kind of want to feel all of the pinball stuff, like all of it. Like I don't know if I could get a pinball machine and not have all of those moving parts and stuff like that. That makes that whole experience. However, virtual pinball is more versatile because you can just load up whatever pinball or V-pin, whatever they call it, to play whatever game you want. So you do have that, which is pretty cool that you're not locked down into one single pinball machine. You could play Family Guy one day and then Simpsons and Jurassic Park or whatever it is. And really that's pretty cool. Either way, I am not pinball rich yet, but maybe if you tell your friends to watch these videos, I could be, and then we'll do a video on that. But anyways, let me know in the comments below, do you follow the same thing that I do? I'm hitting controllers as I'm going. Do you follow the same thing? Do you have specific controllers for specific systems? If you do, what are they? Are they different than mine? Maybe you can give me some ideas. Or do you just use one controller for everything? Because you're smarter than most of us. But anyways, let me know in the comments what you do for your systems and how it all works. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me in the Discord to talk all about retro gaming, and hope you all have a good one.